Have you ever had something bad happen only to discover later that it was actually good? Maybe you didn't get the job you wanted. You missed a flight. Your plans got canceled. You failed at something important. At first, it felt terrible, but later, something even better happened. In American English, we often say, a blessing in disguise. But what does that really mean? Today, I'll teach you the exact meaning, how Americans use this idiom, common real-life situations, and we will finish with some pronunciation practice. Let's get started. So what does a blessing in disguise mean? Let's break it down. A blessing is something positive. A disguise is something that hides the truth. So a blessing in disguise is a good thing that is hidden inside what looks like a bad situation, a problem that secretly becomes an opportunity. At first, you only see the bad part. Later, you discover the hidden benefit. And Americans use this all the time when talking about jobs, school, relationships, business, travel, life changes, and unexpected problems. Let's look at some real-life situations of how Americans actually use this idiom. I want you to imagine for a moment that you apply for your dream job. You prepare for weeks, you study, you practice interviews, you feel confident. Then you get the dreaded email. You didn't get the job. You're devastated. For weeks you think, why did this happen? A month later, something unexpected happens. Another company contacts you. The salary is higher, the hours are better, the office is closer to home. The manager is supportive. You accept the new position. A year later, you say, not getting that first job was really a blessing in disguise. At the time, it felt like a failure, but it actually led to something much better. And that's exactly what Americans mean when they use this idiom. Let's look at another situation where we would use this idiom. I want you to imagine that you're flying to another city for a business meeting. You get stuck in traffic on the way to the airport. By the time you arrive, the plane has already left. You're furious. You spent money on the ticket. You planned the entire trip. Now everything is ruined. The next available flight isn't until the next morning. Since you have some unexpected free time, you decide to stop by the office before heading home. While there, you run into a client that you haven't seen in years. You start talking. The client mentions a major project his company is planning. A few weeks later, you win the contract. The project becomes one of the biggest deals of your career. Looking back, you could say, missing that flight was a blessing in disguise. Let's look at another example. I want you to imagine a small business owner. One day, his biggest client leaves. That client represented nearly 40% of his income. He can't sleep. He panics. He's worried his business might fail. Since he can no longer rely on one customer, he starts marketing aggressively. Over the next year, he gains 10 new clients. His business becomes larger than ever. And now he's no longer dependent on a single customer. Years later, he says, losing that client was really a blessing in disguise. As you can see in this example, if the business owner hadn't lost that large client, he wouldn't have taken the initiative to market aggressively and really try to acquire the new customers. I want you to imagine now a woman who has worked for a company for 8 years. One morning, she gets called into a meeting. The company is downsizing. Her position is being eliminated. She feels shocked. She worries about paying bills. She worries about her future. But while searching for new opportunities, she realizes something. She never actually enjoyed her old job. She had just become comfortable. A few months later, she starts her own consulting business. She earns more money, she has more freedom, and she controls her own schedule. Years later, she tells people, getting laid off was a blessing in disguise. Let's look at one more example. I want you to picture a teenager who tries out for the best soccer team in his city. He's convinced he'll make it. When the results are posted, his name isn't there. He's heartbroken. For weeks, he feels discouraged. Then he joins a smaller team. The coach notices his dedication and spends extra time training him. His skills improve dramatically. A year later, he earns a spot on an even better team than the one he originally wanted. Later, he looks back and says, not making the first team was a blessing in disguise. So remember, a blessing in disguise starts with something negative that later becomes something positive. And that's the key idea. Now, let's work on your pronunciation. Repeat after me. It was a blessing in disguise. It was a blessing in disguise. It was a blessing in disguise. Now, for those of you that really want to take your English to the next level, getting stronger with your usage of idioms will help you do that. If you haven't already seen this video, click here.